The world right now feels like it's holding its breath. From the streets of Europe, where thousands are rising in protest against anti Semitism and terrorism, to Africa, where insecurity and kidnappings continues to shake multiple communities, and across the Atlantic, where the United States is preparing for a historic 250-year celebration. While still facing deep political tension in the Middle East, Iran especially, the situation is even more fragile, with reports of military escalations paused, not ended, as global powers weigh their next moves carefully. One wrong decision can shift everything, and that is just the beginning. This is because across South America, Australia, and Asia, economies are under pressure. The governments are struggling, and citizens are asking one question: is the world becoming more stable or more divided? Stay with me, because in this global update, we break down exactly what is happening across every major region and why all of it is connected more than you think. Headlines around Europe, Africa, Asia, the Americas, Australia. Here are the major global stories dominating conversations across continents right now. In Europe, mass protests against anti Semitism and terrorism is taking across everywhere. Across several European cities and nations, including London, Paris, and Berlin, thousands of protesters have taken to the streets demanding stronger action against terrorism, anti Semitic attack, and growing fears linked to Middle East tensions. And now the demonstration intensified after multiple terror related investigations connected to Iranian backed groups and attacks targeting Jewish communities in Europe and the United States. The US authorities recently charged an Iraqi national accused of helping coordinate attacks on Jewish institutions in London and now New York. And in New York. The European leaders are now under pressure to tighten security, strengthen intelligence cooperations, and calm rising social tensions as fear of wider regional conflicts continues to escalate. Some major protesters carry sign reading "Never Again," "Stop Terror," "Protect Jewish Communities," and at the same time, pro Palestinian demonstrations are also continuing in several countries, showing how deeply divided public opinions have become across Europe. Now, let's go to Africa, talking about Nigeria kidnappings and terror. Kidnapping and terror continues to rise in Nigeria, especially in some parts of the country, like the northern parts, where kidnapping, bandits, attacks, and insurgency continue to affect communities. In recent reports, it shows joint US and Nigerian task force operations killed a senior Islamic State commander in the Lake Chad Basin region. And this is very important because authorities says the operation targeted extremist networks responsible for these kidnapping attacks in villages, destruction of communities, and assaults on schools and religious centers. It is very important because a lot is going on. And despite the military gains, many Nigerians are still worried about rising insecurity, about the kidnappings for ransom, economic hardship, and displacement of families in northern communities and northern states of Nigeria, communities in parts of Kaduna, Zamfara, Borno, and recently Oyo State, and even Niger State continues to face fear over armed groups operating in rural areas. Let's go to South Africa. The foreign nationals are facing growing pressure in South Africa to leave. In South Africa, the tension around immigration and unemployment are making headlines. A lot of activist groups and local movements have renewed demands for documented foreign nationals. If you're a foreigner in South Africa, you have to be up to date with your papers. or to leave the country, arguing that job and public services are under pressure because of those foreigners. The issue has sparked heated debates across southern Africans, especially involving migrants from Zimbabwe, from Nigeria, from Mozambique, and Malawi, and other African nations. Now, it's very important to note that critics warns that the rhetoric risks fueling xenophobia and violence similar to past attacks on migrants. It's very bad. And South African authorities, meanwhile, insist immigration enforcement must follow the law while trying to calm the tension between the communities and their hosts and the migrants. Now, moving over to North America, the US prepares for its 250th birthday. The United States is preparing for a historic milestone, its 250th anniversary celebration, popularly called America 250. Events are already being planned across the country ahead of July 4th, 2026, to mark the 250-year celebrations since the Declaration of Independence in the country. And it's very important because this anniversary is expected to include military parades, national prayer events, concerts, historical exhibitions, and patriotic campaigns. Of course, the president, Donald Trump, has repeatedly emphasized themes like one nation under God, American identity, and national restoration. It is also important to note that the celebration is also happening during a time of political polarization, economic debates, and foreign policy tensions, making the symbolic event even more significant. Now, let's move over to Asia and the Middle East. And it's very important to note that Trump has paused strikes on Iran. And this is one of the biggest news on the global development today, and remains as, and even though there is escalating tension involving Iran, Israel, and the United States. Reports has also indicated that President Donald Trump has recently paused immediate military escalation against Iran. And it's very important to also know that while diplomatic and military discussions continue to hold behind the scenes, Europe global markets are also closely watching developments because any major conflict involving Iran could affect fuel prices, shipping routes, global trade, and international security. Moving over to South America, the economic pressure and political divisions are high. Several South African nations continue to face inflation, political protests, rising food costs, and debates over economic reforms. Countries like Argentina and Brazil are dealing with public frustration over living conditions and government spendings. Analysts say many South African economies remain vulnerable to global energy prices and international trade instability caused by conflict elsewhere. In Australia, security and cost of living dominate discussion, and national conversation is heavily focused on rising house costs, immigration policies, China-Pacific relationship, and defense partnership with Western allies. Australia continues strengthening military and intelligence cooperation with the US and UK amid growing Indo-Pacific tension. The global mood right now and across the world, several themes connect today's headline. Major global concerns include terrorism and insecurity, immigration tension, rising nationalism, economic pressure, Middle East instability, and political polarization. Fear of wider global conflicts, what many nations are watching closely for, whether tensions with Iran escalates, Europe handling of protests and security, and Africa battling against terrorism and kidnapping, America symbolic 250-year celebration during divided political era. Thank you for listening to the end of this World Daily. See you again in my next one. Bye for